Season 6, Episode 13 of My Hero Academia actually included a lot of stuff that I never thought we would see in the anime, but still managed to leave out something that I do think is going to be incredibly important for later on, and we'll get to that a little later in the video. But first off, let's talk about all the content that they added that we were supposed to get last season that I'm really happy to see. Now, in Season 5 of My Hero Academia, of course, we had the My Villain Academia arc, which featured the villains taking all the perspective focus from the story in a short arc where they go up against the Meta Liberation Army for the sake of their friend Giron, who's been taken by that group. And I had a really big problem with the way that this arc was handled last season, because not only did they completely switch the order of the arcs between the Endeavor arc and the My Villain Academia arc, causing them to do a lot of awkward transitions between two arcs that didn't happen in that order, they also cut out a lot of the stuff from My Villain Academia that actually fleshed out the villains quite a bit. Now, I don't know if Bones just figured this stuff wouldn't come back and wouldn't be all that important, since it was stuff that fleshed out some of the lesser known lead characters, but I'm really happy in this episode to have seen Spinner and Compress's development really helped by the fact that we got these scenes. My Villain Academia was an arc all about fleshing out the League of Villains and kind of just making them more of a family and making them feel way more united. So without properly getting this moment where it feels like they're really at their limit as a group and they've all realized that they all have different goals, them coming together didn't really feel as good as it was supposed to last arc. But in this arc, I really liked how it was used to emphasize the moments of Spinner trying to get Shigaraki back in control and Compress trying to get everyone free using his final performance. Now, speaking of Compress, in this episode we get the reveal that Compress is actually another character who comes from a very interesting bloodline, but it's one that we actually haven't seen all that much of. But this isn't the first time that we've actually heard of Oji Harima in My Hero Academia. A lot of people might have forgotten that in Season 4 of My Hero, I believe it was Overhaul or Shigaraki who were having a conversation about three iconic villains in the underworld, those being All For One, Destro from the original Meta Liberation Army, and Oji Harima, the Peerless Thief. And of course, eventually we saw Destro coming back into the story, being part of the Meta Liberation My Villain Academia plotline, and obviously All For One was going to come back into the plotline because he's one of those three that was still alive. But it was always a mystery how Oji Harima was going to wrap around into the story. A lot of us figured that there was going to be some sort of group of thieves or something, maybe that were going to be working in the shadows, but ultimately it was revealed that that is part of Mr. Compress's backstory, and I really think it paints him as much less of a villain in the original sense of what a villain is, and more of just a Robin Hood-esque figure, because it seems like that is the responsibility of the Harima family, right? That they are thieves who go in and find injustice and then expose it to the people while also lining the people's pockets in the hopes of social reform. And I gotta say, Mr. Compress isn't exactly wrong in this want, and his family definitely isn't wrong, because the My Hero world is in very harsh need of some kind of social reform, which is something that we'll also touch on in the Spinner plotline as the series goes on. Now, eventually Spinner finds the hand in Shigaraki's pocket, which belongs to Nana Shimura most likely, and his goal in putting the hand back on Shigaraki in the manga, he says, is he wants Shigaraki to remember that hate. But what happens when the hand does go on Shigaraki is Shigaraki's hatred from his origin does swell up, but ultimately it gives All For One control of Shigaraki's body. Now, for anime onlys, I know this is an entirely new concept because we've never seen All For One controlling Shigaraki's body before, but quirks work in very mysterious ways, and you can pretty much just assume that All For One's quirk does carry a large part of All For One's personality, and once that was given to Shigaraki, All For One's dominating evil personality started taking over and filling in the space of Shigaraki's broken psyche. So now you essentially have two different versions of All For One moving around in the world, because it's not like the All For One that's sitting in prison is currently the one controlling Shigaraki. His quirk is pretty much on autopilot, and it's more or less like there's another All For One now out there in the world, with Shigaraki still being able to take control in certain moments. Now, I know that's probably hard to hear for a lot of Shigaraki fans who want his own personality and his own character to really shine through, but the best that I think anime onlys can really hope for is a proper fusion between All For One and Shigaraki's personality, with Shigaraki taking all the most villainous aspects of All For One into his character. And that is to a certain extent what we see later on, but the jury's still out if we're going to see Shigaraki again in this season after the next couple episodes, because we don't know if we're covering the Star and Stripes section of the manga. Now, I personally think that all the villain scenes in this episode were handled really well, and we also got a special scene including a mysterious character named Drill Guy. I don't even remember what the character's name is anymore, but it was an added scene by Bones showing that the heroes are taking losses and there are deaths actually happening in this war arc, and I believe next episode we're really going to see the death toll in full and fully check out all the losses that we had in this arc. But I feel like there's no reason that you should have to wait that long, so I'm currently, while you're watching this video, working on a video tallying up every single death that the heroes faced in this arc of My Hero Academia, and I suppose we'll also include the villain side as well, just to get a total picture of everything that was lost in this war arc. By the end of the episode, we do see a number of people laying laying down and not looking like they're in the best condition. But despite that, Deku does launch himself towards Shigaraki, or I guess All For One, still trying to get his attention and still trying to stop him from getting away. Now it's here in the manga where we actually have Deku say something very specific to Shigaraki that was actually cut out of the anime, and I do think this is going to be important later on because we only heard half of what Deku said. After the events of everything that have gone on in the war arc, you definitely can't blame Deku for having some sort of grudge against Shigaraki. So in the manga, when Deku goes, "Shigaraki, I will definitely blank blank," we're left to believe that Deku is screaming, "Shigaraki, I will definitely defeat you," or "I would definitely stop you." But given the context of the moment when Deku was considering the fact that Shigaraki looked like he wanted to be rescued, I very much think that what Deku actually said in the manga is, "Shigaraki, I swear I will save you." But in the anime, we don't get the beginning of that dialogue, with them cutting out Deku yelling, "Shigaraki, I will," just anything. They cut that completely out. Instead, they let us sit with a better version, honestly, in my opinion, of the lines that play at the end of the arc in the manga, which are, "You look like you needed saving." In the manga, that was the version that we got, but in the anime, I feel like I like the line better when Deku says, "You look like you were asking to be rescued," because I feel like that's a way easier pill to swallow for a lot of people. "You look like you needed saving," I feel like it really didn't sit well with a lot of people when it happened in the manga, but "you look like you wanted to be rescued," especially with everything that happened and all the music and everything playing, I feel like was done really, really well in the anime. And that's one thing that I can say for season 6. I do think the war arc, for the most part, was handled very, very well, with us getting some episodes of wonky animation, but for the most part, in the grand picture, I do think Bones did very well again with this arc. Now, next up, what we're going to be seeing is a lot of recovery time for some of the heroes that took place in this war arc, but for the ones that aren't completely out of it, things aren't over, because we've learned in past seasons that things don't just end when you beat the villain, right? Being a hero means actually being a hero. So now that there's all this death and destruction actually going on in My Hero Academia, we're gonna have to see the heroes providing some sort of relief to the people who were affected by all this, and in some cases that even includes fellow heroes, who of course are gonna be traumatized and having some hard decisions after everything that happened in this special operation. So we're gonna be seeing that some characters just didn't make it, we're gonna be seeing some retirements, we're gonna be seeing some really, really shocking things in the episodes to come in My Hero Academia, but ultimately we're gonna wrap up the war arc by seeing several backstories and several moments from characters who are stuck in the hospital and have some time to think and reflect on everything that's gone on. But don't think that the heroes are about to get some sort of lucky break, because everything in Japan is about to fall apart in a way never seen before in the series of My Hero Academia. And honestly, I feel like a lot of people aren't expecting what's coming next, especially with the fact that the next episode preview didn't really show anything out of the ordinary. But now that the heroes have mostly been crushed, it's time for a prison break.